So what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to give you all of the syntax of images. I'm just going to give you the syntax that we're going to be most concerned with in this class. There's lots of other attributes, and in addition, as I said here before, just counting the source: border, height, width. I don't think not alt, align. So border, height, width, and align. Those are all aspects of how this image lays out, right? It's border, it's width, it's height, and does it left, right, top, right, middle, align. Those are also available to you in CSS. And then we're not going to, if you don't like CSS or you haven't been introduced to CSS or you don't want to use CSS, you won't have to in this class because we'll do everything we need to do inside these attributes. But I want you to be aware of it, and I want you to understand that the world is moving away from putting a border inside the image and instead putting that border attribute inside a style sheet that's outside the HTML file and then applying that through CSS. Okay, so you don't have to use CSS at all. Pretty much everything you need to do is going to be stuck in some attribute of some tag. And here are the attributes that we're going to care about in this class. Starting with SRC. Any ideas what SRC stands for? Source. Right? Or in other words, where? What image are we talking about? Whenever you have to locate a file, there's always going to be two things involved. The name of the file and the path, right? You got to know the name of the file and where it is. If I just type the name of the file in here, what is the browser going to assume?
It's relative.
Yeah, where is it?
It's in the same
It's going to be in the same directory, right? So if my image and my HTML page are in the same directory, then it's appropriate to type no path in here. Under any other circumstance, there has to be a path in here. It's usually not the case that we keep our HTML files and our JPG files in the same folder or directory. We usually keep them in different directories, and so there's usually a path and the file name here. Okay, so SRC is the source. It's where that image is and the name of the image. We type in a path and a file name. Path might be null or nothing if the image is in the same directory as the current page. Height and width, you get the idea. That's the height and the width. If you don't specify any of these, the picture will come out whatever size the picture is. However, you can resize the picture to whatever size you want it to be using height and width. In this class, we're just going to use pixels. Lots of different ways of sizing things. You'd just go crazy with all the different units of measurement that you see on web pages. And we're just going to stick with, in this case, we're just going to stick with pixels. Okay, border, 1, 2, 3, 1 pixel border, 2 pixel border, 3 pixel border. That's going to put a border around the image. One of the common things that you'll probably want to do is if your image is also a link, to turn off the border. So have a border of 0 if the image is a link, so that there's not a big line around your image making the image look kind of amateurish. Right? So usually the borders are turned off. A border will be turned on automatically on the image if you make it a link. So you have to physically turn the border off the image in order to make the image not have a border if you want it to be a link. On the other hand, if the image isn't a link, the border will be 0 by default. Okay, all these little niggly things that are just going to drive you crazy if you want to have picture-perfect pages. If you want to be sloppy like me and not care whether your images have borders or not, then you can get away with a lot. Okay, border, alt. Okay, alt and title are kind of a pain. And the reason they're kind of a pain is because there's a way that it kind of traditionally was done on the web, what these things meant, and then there's kind of the proper way that people are now coming around to. This is the proper way, and I might as well, if you haven't heard about these things before, I might as well teach you the right way from the beginning so you don't get confused. Alt is there specifically for people who can't render images. Maybe you have a really low bandwidth connection and you're not going to download the images, or maybe you're blind and you can't see the images. Right? Those are all things. And in that case, the alt tag supplies a text version of the image. That's the idea. It's an alternative to the image. Where you usually see that is when the link is broken, and when the link is broken, you see the alt text instead. You might have you might be using a mobile phone, right, to view a web page. In which case, you probably don't want to download a bunch of these fancy images, and instead you'll render the alt tag to see that the text is right. Okay, alt. Title, on the other hand, is used to render tooltips. And tooltips are little things that mouse over. When you mouse over an image, a little box shows up, another little rectangle shows up, and it has some sort of caption in it. It's kind of like the caption of the image, and we use the title attribute for that. Okay? Some confusion exists because in Internet Explorer, the alt tag will also render one of those little pop-ups. But that's considered to be kind of like not right. And so we use the title attribute for the pop-ups, we use the title attribute for the tooltips, and we use the alt attribute to describe the image for browsers that can't render images. Yeah?
Would 2 boxes pop up?
No, if you have both of them, still only 1 box will pop up. Good question. Okay, and then the alignment, align left, right, and etc. So top, bottom, and again the alignment here, just like the width of the table, is relative to the container. So if I say align right, and this image tag is a block tag, meaning it's not inside another tag, then it's going to align right to the screen. But if it's in a cell of a table, it's going to align right to the cell of the table. If it's inside a paragraph tag, it's going to align right to the paragraph tag. Okay, so this is where things get a little squirrely in the relativity and the context that tags are in. The same tag does not render the same way no matter where it is. It really depends where it is as to how it renders. And there's nothing but experience that's going to get you to the point where you feel comfortable about that. And there's nothing but trial and error that's going to get you to the point where you like all of your pages. And unfortunately, because of browser differences, trial and error means trial and error in 4 or 5 different browsers and in 4 or 5 different versions of 4 or 5 different browsers. Literally, you could be in 20 browsers trying to make sure that no matter who sees this thing, it looks okay. Yeah?
As far as white spaces, does it matter in terms of the syntax of the tag?
Does white space matter in the syntax of the tag?
Between source and
No, well, let's say for the moment no, because we're in HTML land, and in an HTML browser, whether you put no space here or 5 spaces here, will still interpret this the same. But you should get used to typing things in a standard way. And so I would say you won't get in trouble if you put white space all over the place inside of this thing. Like if you put, I think even if you put white space before here and here, I think a browser will still interpret it right. But it's not correct syntax. The correct syntax is no space here, 1 space here, no space here, no space here, 1, none, 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 1. So get used to doing it just the right way, because that way when you get into less permissive environments, you won't get messed up. Okay? Okay, so questions about pictures? They use the path, and you'll get used to all of these attributes. The thing that will continue to mess you up for your life will be the path. And you'll see an image that doesn't display, and you'll say, why isn't this image displaying? I'm looking for it, it's right there, and the problem will be the path.